Hey guys, it's been a while since I did a non-Gundam video because work's been pretty rough lately and I've been a little depressed. But today I'm going to talk about the worst Batman film that I've seen in recent memory. And do not worry, it is not Matt Reeves' amazing The Batman. I love that movie. I mean, it did everything right? Everyone loved it. Best Batman movie in the past 20 years, I would dare say. Potentially the best Hollywood soundtrack in decades. Michael Giacchino completely channeled Danny Elfman while making something truly encompassing and honoring the history of Batman. Do you guys want me to review The Batman instead? Let me know. Anyway, everyone's talking about that movie already, so I'm not going to do what everyone else is doing. I'm going to talk about something else. So right before The Batman movie came out, anyway, about a year ago, there was this movie, Batman Soul of the Dragon. It was last year's original Bruce Timm animated straight-to-DVD Batman movie. It had a lot of hype before it came out, but when it did come out, all that hype dissipated. That being said, the DC animated movies are usually pretty fucking good. So, I just watch all of them because they're usually good. Anyway, so the movie went on HBO Max like a few weeks back to hype up The Batman. So I was really excited because now I could finally watch this movie without paying for it. And going to this movie, I was actually really, really hyped up because I was hyped up for The Batman. I was hyped up because, this is the first Batman movie that's ever been made to try and capture the silver age of comics, the late 1970s. And Batman's design in this movie completely reflects that. He's got the blue costume with the pointy ears. And I also heard that this movie was kind of a tribute to Bruce Lee's masterpiece film, Enter the Dragon, so I was pumped up about that too. After Bruce Lee died, Enter the Dragon itself spawned a series of weak-ass copycats because his death was so mysterious, and people kind of realized that Enter the Dragon was pretty much the gold standard for a martial arts film. Until the 1990s when it finally faded out of public consciousness due to its age and Bruce Lee and his son being dead for so long. But yeah, Enter the Dragon as I remember it, because I haven't seen it in 20 years since I was a teenager. It's about Bruce Lee in a badass yellow suit with nunchucks, and he fights Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who's 2 feet taller than him. Somehow he wins even though Jabbar has a height advantage. And then they become friends and they team up to fight Bruce Lee's American archenemy, who is Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris is on this illegal fighting tournament island, and Bruce Lee shows up there, beats everyone there with his godlike apex of human being skills, and the movie is more or less a long display of Lee's fighting abilities chained together into this bare bones story about the mysterious fighting tournament island. Now, if I'm completely wrong about that movie, I'm sorry. It's been 20 years since I saw it, and I guess I should probably rewatch it. That's how I remember it. That's maybe not what it actually is. Anyway, so alright, back to Batman. So, I thought this movie was going to be intensely inspired by old 70s Batman comics, and tell me an old 70s Batman story that I've never read but is knowable enough to be made into a movie. And even though it sells itself as that, that's not really what it is. The story is not really a straight up pastiche of Enter the Dragon either, although it does pull a lot of tropes in that movie. They pull a bunch of random references to 70s Batman, but the movie's a fucking weird train wreck. Okay, so the movie starts off with the main character, Richard Dragon, out chatting an animated version of Sean Connery's James Bond. And being hey, did you think this was a Batman movie? Psych, we took your money. It's actually an animated Bruce Lee movie featuring Batman as a sidekick. Anyway, so yeah, this movie makes up this weird story that during Bruce Lee... sorry, too many Bruces on the brain. No wonder they named him Richard. Richard's a goofy name though. There are too many characters in the DCU named Bruce and Richard, so keeping them all straight, it's just confusing and kind of corny. That during Bruce Wayne's years of training in Asia under the Ninja Group, which you might remember in Batman Begins was Ra's al Ghul and the League of Assassins. In this movie, it's just O-Sensei, who's an outstanding DC Universe sensei guy. And he lives in this magical, perfect Asian village kingdom. And he apparently put together this karate class at the time for Batman, which featured Richard Dragon, Lady Shiva, Bronze Tiger, who's just a stand-in for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Basically all the DC karate heroes together trained at this class together in the 70s. And Batman was there too, because Batman. Anyway, then the villain in this movie is the Cobra Cult, and I fucking hate the Cobra Cult. Whenever there's a Cobra Cult story, I just always in my head think that they're just the Cobra army from G.I. Joe. Because they essentially are, except Cobra from G.I. Joe has several supervillains inside of it, where DC Comics Cobra just has King Snake. And half the time, King Snake is identical to Serpentor from G.I. Joe anyway. So again, like, I always kind of like associate them as like the same thing but worse. You know, like Shasta Cola is worse than Coca-Cola. Anyway, my point is that G.I. Joe Cobra is so much better than DC Cobra that DC Cobra just seems so unoriginal and stupid when it comes up in any storylines, even if it's a retro throwback one to when they made a little bit more sense. Anyway, so we're introduced to King Snake, and he comes off like this typical Batman-style gangster, and we get a pretty dark introduction scene to him where he's just fucked this hooker, and instead of paying her money for the fucking, he feeds her to this pit of hungry snakes. And it's a very tonally weird scene. It's very gratuitous. It's very like, hey, are you a hooker? You deserve to die. It was trying to establish the villain, but I think more than that, it was trying to establish like the mature tone of this movie, like, hey, this isn't for kids, we've got hookers and we're killing them. But I really want to say it failed at doing that because it's wasted on this movie. This movie isn't even all that violent or all that scary. Like, aside for this hooker dying here, and a few people, I think some kids die at the finale of the film, this is otherwise a completely G-rated movie. Anyway, so Richard Dragon is the main character of this movie, and he goes to Gotham to recruit Bruce Wayne, who was part of his old karate class, to help him take down Cobra. And we're introduced to Bruce Wayne, who has like a mullet, and he's in the middle of breaking up with Silver St. Cloud. And this is a very awkward callback to 70s Batman comics, because yeah, they dated, and he broke up with her in the 70s, and she was never seen again. But the scene is stupid, because it doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't pay off. She's never seen again in this movie, or explained other than being Bruce's ex-girlfriend. So, I mean, why include it as all, aside from like, deep cut comics reference, I guess? Anyway, so Dragon shows up. He asks Bruce Wayne to join in this case. Bruce Wayne basically tells Dragon he doesn't want it, gives him some bullshit line, and then Dragon gets pissed off and throws a knife at Bruce. And Bruce just catches it easily, so Dragon knows he's lying. Then a little bit later, they go to literally Studio 54, the coolest disco in the 70s, and Batman shows up, and Dragon just instantly knows that Bruce is Batman in a costume. And another thing that really sucks about this movie is like literally everyone instantly knows on sight in this movie that Bruce Wayne is Batman, and that just felt really abnormal to me. Like just everyone like can like see straight through him. It's really weird actually. Anyway, so they drive from downtown New York's nightclub district to LA's Chinatown, where they randomly meet up with Lady Shiva now, who's a bad guy, and she's running like an illegal fight club, but because she was in the karate class back in the day, they want her on the team, and she reluctantly joins them for whatever reason. Oh, and at some point, Bronze Tiger joins them too, and the movie tells you nothing about this dude other than he's black, he knows karate, and he's strong as Batman, but not nearly as ambitious. I was gonna go off on a rant that this movie kind of does a bad job of portraying all these different generic characters. It's just like token karate fighters of like different races and like ethnicities and genders, but I don't know, as I like kept watching this movie, it just occurred to me that they even do this to Batman, and just like none of the characters are really well defined in this movie, so this movie just like suffers from bad characterization around the board. Like none of the characters are really well explained. It's just like, here's this cool Bruce Lee ripoff, here's Batman, you know who Batman is, and everyone else, just fuck him. Anyway, so as it turns out, the main crux of the movie is that their sensei, O-Sensei, got sucked into this portal to hell, and now the Cobra Cult is trying to open the portal to hell because their leader is being seduced by a mysterious voice. But of course, no one wants him to open the portal of hell, because obviously if he does that, a bunch of demons will walk out. Now, if that plot sounds at all familiar to literally anyone watching this review, it's because that is literally the plot of Marvel's hit film Shang-Chi starring Awkwafina. Except in that movie, the villain was the main character's father, and he wanted to open the hell door because he thought if he did, his dead wife was inside it. The Cobra Cult, I guess, thought they could meet their Cobra God or something if they opened the hell door, but it was never really explained well. It was just vague and stupid. And otherwise, yeah, same plot from Shang-Chi, so what the fuck? That also really threw me for a loop. So get this movie comes out in January 2021. Shang-Chi actually comes out 8 months later in August of 2021. Same year, few months apart, super weird. I really wanted to call out in this review that this movie ripped off Shang-Chi, but it actually came out before Shang-Chi, so now I'm a little baffled. Anyway, it's very shocking to me that Hollywood releases almost identical movies at around the same time, and I can never figure out how that happens. Is it like corporate espionage? Is it like some kind of synchronicity? Or are they just like secretly spying and ripping off each other? It's so fucking weird. It's like weird like when Ants and A Bug's Life came out together, and this is even weirder because that's so fucking specific. You know someone had to steal that from someone else. And now I'm just like wondering like which came first, the chicken or the egg. Anyway, so long story short, a bunch of shenanigans go down, some planes are hijacked, Cobra Dude eventually gets to the Hell Door and he opens it, and demonically possessed O-Sensei comes out of the door and easily kills him. So then Richard Dragon, not Batman, has the final climactic battle with demonically possessed O-Sensei. Again, weird fucking movie. Batman is in this movie, but Batman is a fucking sidekick. So then, at the end of the movie, because the door to hell is still open, Richard, Batman, and the other karate commandos all just go straight into hell. And then it just cuts off there with this like vague implied ending that they're gonna fight demons for the rest of eternity, or maybe they're gonna die in hell. It's a really very weird, inconclusive ending, especially for these straight-to-video Batman movies, which usually clean up pretty well. Or like literally any other movie like would have had them at least like find a way out of hell, or at least like beat up the demon inside of hell so that like they take over hell. This movie just drops it off with, now they're in hell, wonder what's gonna happen next. But yeah, this movie was really weird. It was not a Batman movie. It was an animated fake Bruce Lee movie where Batman was Bruce Lee's sidekick. Which, if I had to like put a finger on it, maybe it's like some weird long distance revenge for the time in 1966 where Bruce Lee was actually on the Adam West Batman show and he could barely beat Bruce Ward's Robin in a fistfight. In fact, I think Robin might have won. But yeah, Richard Dragon in this movie sucks. He's a legit clone of Bruce Lee, and there's nothing original about him. He's literally just Bruce Lee. Oh, and also the name Richard Dragon sounds token as fuck. Is this a real character? Hold on, I need to look up this shit. Oh god, this is so much worse than I imagined. Okay, so apparently Richard Dragon is basically DC's ripoff of Iron Fist, where some white guy goes to Asia and learns how to out-Asian the Asians at their own karate game. Goes back to America, where because he knows karate, that's a superpower in the 70s, and somehow ends up becoming as prolific as Batman with only that. Although throughout the years he's been reimagined as a Russian gangster or a Latino. I guess he was a karate teacher for a while, and in some continuities he's just literally Chuck Norris. Okay, yeah, that's a weird, problematic character. Definitely hard to tackle. I can see why they've tried to reimagine him as a bad guy or Chuck Norris, or in this movie they literally just reimagined him as Bruce Lee. But yeah, that's a stupid character with a stupid history. I'm besides myself trying to wonder if it's worth fixing this character by changing everything about him. I kind of think I would have been happier if this was just like an entirely new character, like, I don't know, his name was like Rock Lee or something, and, you know, it was just like more blatant that they were just ripping off Bruce Lee to make a movie. I don't know, I guess as I'm contemplating this over, this whole movie seems like a really half-baked attempt to reboot the Richard Dragon character, but through Batman by putting Batman's name on it, and I guess just like course-correcting everything about him and like tying Batman in there. I don't know, I know a lot of people wanted them to reboot Iron Fist with like an Asian hero, and that made sense, but this Richard Dragon, as far as I know, is too obscure and too meaningless a relic to warrant a significant reimagined reboot like that. So anyway, that all aside, Batman Soul of the Dragon is madly disappointing as a animated Batman movie. Like I said with this review, worst animated Batman movie ever. Because at least even if you like watching a baby Batman movie where like Batman fights Dracula or just like a T-Rex or something, you're at least still getting Batman as the main character. Batman in this movie does nothing. Literally, if you completely edit Batman out of this film, absolutely nothing would change. Richard Dragon carries this entire story start to finish, does all the meaningful business, and the only reason Batman is even in this movie is because people know who Batman is and will buy a Batman movie without watching it. That's why I have to judge this movie as the worst animated Batman film, because Batman has literally zero things to do in this movie. There's no reason for him to be here. And to add insult to injury, it cuts off at the exact point when it seems like something interesting is about to happen in this boring fucking movie, and all the characters end up literally in hell. I'm giving it a 2 out of 10 because it felt so much like a bait and switch. There were so many false promises with this movie, like the unfulfilled promise of a fully animated Silver Age 70s Batman comic. Instead, it's just a bunch of vague references to the 1970s as a whole, as like some old boomer guy remembers them. It's a whole bunch of like, hey, remember Studio 54? Remember Saturday Night Fever? Remember Bruce Lee? Remember Enter the Dragon? All the bad throwbacks to Enter the Dragon are really poorly executed. And I can't fucking comprehend, why does this movie have the same ending as Shang-Chi? And how does it have the same ending as Shang-Chi when it came out slightly before Shang-Chi? Like, seriously, did someone at DC sneak into Marvel and was like, hey, let's rip off that ending of Shang-Chi right before it comes out? That'll stick into Marvel. Either way, if DC wants to just waste time writing fan fiction stories about Bruce Lee, then they should just have the balls to actually be like, you know, Bruce Lee comics, instead of like writing some weird fantasy story where they completely reboot some racist Russian Chuck Norris karate man from the 70s as an Asian guy. Anyway, I was being Buster Green, and believe me, I have high standards when it comes to Batman movies, and this one does not meet them. Please subscribe. I'll be around. Thank you.